Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel NPA Discovery, the place where we look beyond famous performances, polished publicity photographs, and nostalgic television memories to discover the complicated people behind them. Today, we are exploring the life of Jack Cassidy, a Tony-winning Broadway star, a gifted singer, a master of elegant comic arrogance, the father of performers David, Shaun, and Patrick Cassidy, and a man whose private deterioration became increasingly impossible for his family to hide. To audiences, Jack appeared born for the spotlight. He could enter a scene with a raised eyebrow, a controlled smile, and the confidence of someone who expected the room to belong to him. On stage, that confidence was disciplined and precise. He understood timing, posture, phrasing, and the theatrical value of appearing just slightly too pleased with himself. Television later used that quality brilliantly, casting him as charming egotists, calculating villains, and performers whose sophistication concealed danger. Away from the stage, however, control became much harder to maintain. According to the family recollections presented in the source, Jack's moods grew increasingly erratic during the 1970s. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, drank heavily, experienced episodes of disinhibition and grandiosity, and eventually required psychiatric care. His marriage to Shirley Jones ended while his professional work remained strong. After the divorce, he lived alone in a Hollywood penthouse, continued drinking, and died at 49 when a fire swept through the apartment after he apparently fell asleep with a lit cigarette. The title of this documentary describes Broadway brilliance, private secrets, and a fatal fire. I agree with the title, but I disagree with any interpretation that turns Jack Cassidy's death into a poetic conclusion as though a flamboyant performer was somehow destined to burn out. There was nothing glamorous about the fire. It was not a final theatrical effect. It was an accidental and preventable death involving alcohol, smoking, isolation, and a rapidly spreading apartment blaze. Romantic language may make the story sound dramatic, but it can hide the practical warning contained within it. I also disagree with the idea that Jack's sexuality should be treated as one of the dark forces that destroyed him. His son David and former wife Shirley Jones later described him as bisexual and discussed affairs with both men and women. Those disclosures belong to the biography because concealment, marriage, social pressure, and infidelity affected the family. But bisexuality itself was not an illness, a scandal, or a cause of mental collapse. A responsible story must separate bipolar disorder from bad character, sexuality from betrayal, alcohol dependence from artistic temperament, and a tragic accident from some imaginary curse attached to fame. Jack Cassidy was neither a secret monster nor a misunderstood saint. He was an extraordinarily talented performer who could be loving, ambitious, vain, unfaithful, disciplined, unstable, funny, frightened, and destructive at different moments. His life asks us to hold admiration and accountability together. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video, share it with another fan of Broadway and classic television, and subscribe to the channel. Your support gives us the motivation to continue producing detailed documentaries that move beyond scandal and examine what famous lives can teach us about creativity, family, illness, responsibility, and legacy. Now, let us return to Queens, New York, in the years before the applause, to a crowded household, a Depression-era childhood, and a boy who learned the discipline of work long before anyone paid to hear him sing. John Joseph Edward Cassidy was born on March 5, 1927, in Richmond Hill, Queens. He was the youngest of 5 children in an Irish-German-American household. His father, William, worked as an engineer for the Long Island Railroad. His mother, Charlotte, had emigrated from Hamburg, Germany. The family did not belong to the theatrical elite. They were not waiting backstage with influential producers or financing private lessons as a casual hobby. Their security depended on regular work, and Jack grew up understanding that everyone contributed. That background matters because later photographs can make him appear naturally aristocratic. He carried himself like a man who had inherited confidence, tailoring, and cultural authority. In reality, the polish was constructed. He learned how a person could alter the way a room perceived him. Clothing, voice, posture, and vocabulary became tools of self-invention. The elegant performer was not false, but he was built deliberately by a boy who had known ordinary economic pressure. For Jack, show business offered more than applause. It offered transformation. Before Jack became associated with Broadway marquees, he worked an extraordinary range of ordinary jobs. The source lists employment as a bellhop, dishwasher, counterman, chauffeur, salesperson, postal clerk, hotel employee, and stable boy, among other roles. None offered glamour. All taught him something useful. A bellhop learns to read people quickly. A salesperson learns how appearance and confidence affect persuasion. A hotel clerk observes how wealthy guests expect to be treated. A chauffeur learns that proximity to privilege is not the same as possessing it. These experiences may have helped Jack create the polished characters he later played. He had watched social performance from below. He knew how status sounded because he had served people who possessed it, or pretended to. Hard work also became part of his professional identity. Theater requires stamina that audiences rarely see. Rehearsals repeat the same material until spontaneity can be reproduced on command. 8 performances a week leave little room for mood. Jack had learned early that fatigue did not cancel responsibility. That discipline carried him toward the stage. An uncle known professionally as Ben Dova helped open the first door. Dova had worked in vaudeville and as a contortionist. He understood show business not as a distant fantasy but as a difficult trade involving auditions, rejection, timing, and unusual personal branding. He recognized something in Jack and helped arrange opportunities. This kind of family support can change a life. Talent often exists before access, but industries cannot evaluate people they never meet. A relative who understands the system can provide the first introduction. Jack still needed training. He worked with voice coach Paulina Robertson, developing the baritone that would later become one of his greatest assets. Vocal training involves much more than producing attractive sound. The singer learns breath support, diction, endurance, resonance, and how to protect the instrument through repeated performances. At 15, Jack left school to pursue entertainment. That decision contained courage and risk. He was abandoning the conventional route before success was guaranteed. The stage would now have to become his education. At 16, Jack joined the chorus of Cole Porter's Something for the Boys. He was not the star. He was one young performer among many, learning how a professional Broadway production operates from inside the ensemble. Chorus work is often underestimated because the individual performer may not receive headlines. Yet the ensemble carries enormous responsibility. Every entrance must occur at the correct moment. Musical lines must blend. Choreography must remain synchronized. A mistake by one person can distract from the entire scene. For Jack, the chorus provided apprenticeship. He observed experienced actors managing energy, dealing with directors, protecting their voices, and creating recognizable personalities even with limited stage time. He also entered a social world in which unconventional private lives were often known quietly while public images remained carefully controlled. Decades later, family accounts would connect Jack romantically with Cole Porter. That allegation should remain attributed to those later recollections rather than treated as independently proven fact. At 16, however, the immediate reality was simpler: Jack had reached Broadway. Jack continued appearing in productions through the 1940s, including Sadie Thompson, Around the World, Music in My Heart, and The Firebrand of Florence. The sequence illustrates how most major careers actually develop. We remember the award-winning role and forget the years of smaller assignments that made it possible. Each production allowed Jack to test another aspect of performance. One role strengthened musical confidence. Another sharpened comedy. Another expanded his professional network. He learned how casting directors remembered reliability. The young actor also discovered that Broadway careers are unstable even when they appear successful. A show can close. A producer can lose financing. Critics can destroy momentum in one morning. The performer must begin auditioning again no matter how impressive the previous credit seemed. This environment rewards ambition but can also create insecurity. Every success feels temporary. Every younger performer appears as possible replacement. Jack responded by developing a personality too distinctive to ignore. His elegance, baritone, and comic self-assurance became a professional signature. That signature would eventually make him a star, and later make it difficult to separate the performer's confidence from the man's ego. While appearing in The Firebrand of Florence, Jack met actress and dancer Evelyn Ward. They shared the intensity of theatrical life, rehearsals, performances, travel, ambition, and the constant uncertainty of the next job. They married in June 1948. Young performers often enter relationships believing shared passion will create automatic understanding. In some ways it does. Both partners recognize why a rehearsal runs late or why an audition changes the mood of an entire week. But two ambitious performers may also compete for attention, income, and opportunity. The theater becomes both common language and third participant in the marriage. Jack and Evelyn soon became parents to David Bruce Cassidy. Fatherhood introduced responsibility at a moment when Jack's professional ambitions were expanding rapidly. David would later become a major star himself, but during childhood he was simply a son trying to understand a charismatic and frequently absent father. Public accounts often describe entertainment dynasties as inherited glamour. For children inside them, the inheritance may include talent, expectation, instability, and the burden of comparison. David's later fame would reshape how the public remembered Jack. To one generation, Jack was the Broadway star. To another, he was the father of the young man from the Partridge Family. That reversal can be difficult for a parent whose identity depends heavily on professional recognition. The source does not provide a complete psychological account of Jack's reaction to David's later success, so we should avoid inventing jealousy as established fact. But the structure alone created pressure. A father teaches a child the language of performance, then watches the child receive a scale of popular attention the father never experienced. Pride and rivalry can coexist. David later wrote about being haunted by his father's unpredictable moods. That testimony reminds us that children do not experience a parent primarily through awards. They experience whether the parent is emotionally available, frightening, encouraging, absent, sober, or stable. A Tony Award can define a biography. It cannot reassure a child during a manic episode. The difference between public legacy and private memory would become central to the Cassidy family story. By the early 1950s, Jack's Broadway position was strengthening. He joined South Pacific and later secured a leading role in Wish You Were Here. The transition from ensemble member to principal performer changes more than billing. The lead carries the production's emotional rhythm. He receives greater scrutiny from critics, more pressure from producers, and more direct responsibility for audience response. Jack proved capable of carrying that attention. He possessed a quality especially valuable in musical theater: he could make refinement entertaining. His characters often appeared confident enough to risk becoming irritating, but Jack understood how to invite the audience into the joke. He was not merely playing arrogance. He was showing the audience that he knew the character was arrogant. That extra layer created charm. Work in Sandhog, a story connected to Irish laborers building New York's tunnels, reportedly allowed him to bring personal feeling connected to his background. The boy who had worked ordinary jobs was now portraying labor beneath the city while rising above it professionally. Broadway had found a distinctive leading man. In 1955, Jack toured internationally in Oklahoma, playing Curly. The State Department-sponsored production brought American musical theater to audiences overseas. Touring can intensify relationships because the company becomes a temporary world. Performers travel, rehearse, eat, and recover together, far from ordinary routines. During the tour, Jack met Shirley Jones. She was young, talented, and becoming closely associated with the Great American Musical. Their stage chemistry developed into a private relationship. But Jack was still married to Evelyn Ward. This is where romantic storytelling can become dishonest. The language of sparks and destiny makes betrayal sound inevitable. Attraction may be involuntary. Conduct is not. Jack chose to pursue a relationship while another marriage still existed. The connection with Shirley may have been genuine and enduring, but sincerity does not erase the pain caused by the transition. He filed for divorce from Evelyn and moved quickly toward another marriage. The stage provided the setting. The consequences extended far beyond it. During a production of The Beggar's Opera, Jack proposed to Shirley between acts. The gesture was perfectly theatrical. He transformed a private commitment into a scene shaped by timing, performance, and romantic drama. They married in August 1956 and soon became one of Broadway's most glamorous couples. To the public, they appeared ideally matched. Both could sing. Both understood the stage. Both looked comfortable in formal publicity photographs. Their home seemed likely to overflow with music, intelligence, and charm. But a theatrical proposal cannot guarantee an ordinary marriage. Marriage requires the unglamorous disciplines that receive no applause: honesty, financial responsibility, fidelity, patience, and the ability to support a partner's success without feeling diminished. Jack brought immense charisma into the relationship. He also brought ambition, ego, private desires, and vulnerabilities that were not yet fully visible. Shirley would later describe deep affection as well as the strain created by his affairs, drinking, and mental health deterioration. The golden couple contained real love. It also contained problems no publicity image could solve. Jack and Shirley welcomed sons Shaun and Patrick, while David remained part of the larger family structure. Another son, Ryan, would also become part of the Cassidy family. The household was filled with artistic possibility. Children heard professional voices, backstage stories, rehearsed music, and the language of the entertainment industry as ordinary conversation. This environment can nurture talent naturally. A child sees that performing is work rather than magic. He understands auditions and rejection before entering the profession himself. It can also make family life feel like an extension of the business. Who is receiving attention? Whose career is rising? Which parent is away? Which child resembles which performer? Shaun later became a teen idol. Patrick built an acting career. David became an international sensation. The family created a genuine entertainment dynasty. But dynasties are often described from the outside through success alone. Inside, children may inherit unresolved emotional patterns along with musical ability. Jack gave his sons a powerful example of professional dedication. He also gave them memories of instability they would spend years interpreting. In 1962, Jack provided the voice of Bob Cratchit in Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, widely remembered as an early animated holiday television special. Voice acting removed the visual tools that had become central to his stage persona. The raised eyebrow, elegant posture, and knowing smile could not help him. He had to communicate character through sound alone. His warm baritone gave emotional weight to a familiar literary figure. This performance illustrates Jack's genuine versatility. He was not simply a specialist in vanity or villainy. He understood tenderness, musical storytelling, and how vocal color changes the emotional meaning of a line. The work also became part of a format that families would revisit seasonally. A Broadway performer accustomed to live audiences entered homes through animation and recording. This expanding reach prepared him for television. It also shows why his later decline feels so contradictory. A man capable of producing warmth for a family classic could become deeply unstable at home. Artistic sensitivity and emotional health are not the same condition. Jack reached one of his greatest professional achievements with She Loves Me. His performance as Steven Kodaly earned a Tony Award, and the cast recording received Grammy recognition. Kodaly was an ideal Jack Cassidy role: elegant, attractive, self-satisfied, manipulative, and entertaining enough that the audience enjoyed watching him behave badly. Jack knew how to make vanity musical. He could stretch a gesture just far enough, deliver a lyric with polished insincerity, and turn a morally questionable character into a theatrical pleasure. The award confirmed what years of work had built. He was no longer merely a dependable Broadway performer. He was part of the top level of the profession. But awards create their own pressure. Once a performer wins, later work is compared with the recognized peak. Every role becomes evidence of continued relevance or decline. For someone already sensitive to status, acclaim can provide confidence while increasing fear of replacement. Jack had achieved Broadway royalty. He still wanted more territory. The source also describes Jack as struggling with heavy drinking. Alcohol complicates bipolar disorder in several ways. It disrupts sleep, and irregular sleep can destabilize mood. It lowers inhibition, worsening risky behavior. It can interfere with medication adherence and make symptoms harder to interpret. Is the person manic, intoxicated, withdrawing, or experiencing several conditions at once? Alcohol may also become a form of self-medication. A person in an agitated state drinks to slow down. Someone entering depression drinks to become numb. The temporary effect reinforces use, while the longer-term result makes both mood and judgment worse. This cycle is especially dangerous for performers. Drinking is normalized in social and professional environments. Bars become meeting places. A person who remains outwardly charming can avoid confrontation for years. Jack's fatal night would involve drinking and smoking while alone. The substances did not create every problem in his life. They increased the danger surrounding problems already present. Shirley Jones has described attempts to manage Jack's alarming behavior and encourage care. It is tempting to ask why she did not remain and save him. That question places an unfair responsibility on spouses of severely ill people. A partner can encourage treatment, communicate with doctors, remove immediate dangers, and establish boundaries. A partner cannot guarantee another adult's sobriety, medication use, honesty, or insight. Remaining inside an unstable relationship may expose the spouse and children to emotional or physical risk. Leaving does not necessarily mean love disappeared. It may mean the person finally recognized the limit of what private devotion can accomplish. Shirley's position was especially complicated because she had children, a career, and a public image of family harmony. Any decision would be judged. Stay, and people might accuse her of enabling. Leave, and people might say she abandoned a sick husband. There is no morally perfect position. Safety, treatment, and realistic boundaries must matter more than preserving a glamorous public marriage. Jack Cassidy achieved what the boy from Queens could scarcely have imagined. He moved from dishwashing, bellhopping, and stable work to Broadway. He trained a baritone capable of carrying major musicals. He won a Tony and shared in Grammy recognition. He crossed into television, animation, and film. He created villains viewers still remember and helped build a family name recognized across generations. The tragedy is not that success proved meaningless. The tragedy is that success could not perform the work of treatment, honesty, sobriety, and connection. Applause can confirm ability. It cannot stabilize mood. Awards can recognize excellence. They cannot repair broken trust. A penthouse can demonstrate wealth. It cannot make isolation safe. And a famous family name can survive a fire while the person wearing it does not. This is where Jack's story becomes empowering rather than merely tragic. We are not powerless before every force that affected him. Bipolar disorder can be treated. Alcohol misuse can be confronted. Families can establish crisis plans. Performers can disclose health needs without surrendering dignity. People can be bisexual without living as though orientation itself were shameful. Partners can demand honesty. Friends can take disinhibited or grandiose behavior seriously before it becomes public disaster. Smokers can refuse to light a cigarette while intoxicated or drowsy. Buildings can maintain working alarms and evacuation systems. None of these actions guarantees a perfect life. They create another chance. Jack's final night contained too few chances. He was alone, impaired, and surrounded by combustible material. The cigarette fell once. That was enough. His life asks us not to wait for an irreversible event before respecting ordinary prevention. Do not call untreated mania creative energy simply because the person is talented. Do not call addiction part of the personality, because confrontation feels uncomfortable. Do not call infidelity liberation when another person has been denied the truth. Do not call isolation independence when the person is losing the ability to remain safe. And do not call a preventable death destiny because poetic language makes grief easier to package. The greatest tribute to Jack Cassidy is not to copy his intensity. It is to preserve the brilliance while refusing the destruction. Train seriously. Perform courageously. Love honestly. Seek treatment early. Protect the people who share your life. Build a home where success is not the only subject anyone knows how to discuss. Create an identity that can survive a bad review, a missed role, a child's greater fame, a divorce, or the end of applause. Jack mastered the entrance. He knew how to cross a stage and make everyone look toward him. The deeper challenge for every performer, and every person, is learning how to remain when the spotlight moves elsewhere. Remain honest. Remain connected. Remain willing to receive help. Remain alive long enough for the next act to become possible. Thank you for joining us for this journey through Jack Cassidy's childhood, Broadway triumphs, family relationships, mental health crisis, hidden private life, and tragic death. Please share in the comments which performance best represents his talent to you: She Loves Me, He and She, one of his Columbo appearances, Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, or another role. Keep the discussion compassionate and precise. Bipolar disorder should not be used as a synonym for dangerous character. Bisexuality should not be treated as a scandal. Infidelity, addiction, and unsafe behavior remain matters of accountability. Please like this video, share it with another classic theater or television fan, and subscribe to the channel for more deeply human stories from behind the stage and screen. And until next time, remember, you are not weak for needing treatment. You are not disloyal for setting a boundary. You are not less creative when you choose sobriety. You do not owe the world a false identity in order to deserve respect. Your greatest role should never require the destruction of the person performing it. Jack Cassidy left behind a dynasty, unforgettable performances, and a warning written not in theatrical fire, but in ordinary human vulnerability. Listen to that warning. Protect the life behind the talent. Because the most powerful final bow is not dying dramatically. It is surviving honestly.